graders, it's Mrs. Thompson. We're back in section 3.5 and we're going to do example 2. This one probably won't be terribly long, so I am going to take you through the notes here on this page. We'll do a couple on the next page. So a correlation. This describes a relationship between two data sets, and it does actually two things. It helps us analyze trends and helps us to make predictions, because if we see a trend, then we'll be able to predict what's going on here. There are 3 types of correlation. The first one is positive, and that's what I have here on the left side. We have positive correlation. Now what's going on visually is, do you see the points kind of leaning to the right? Do you see that? They're leaning towards the right side. And because that's true, because we see the cluster of points kind of leaning to the right, we would call that a positive correlation. Now, if we were just examining a situation, we weren't looking at a graph, if both sets of values, as you increase on the x, the y also increases, then that's what we consider a positive correlation as well. Okay, now negative, as you can see here in the middle, it's leaning to the left. So I'm going to circle kind of that cluster, and can you see that it's leaning back towards the left, more towards the y-axis. The positive is leaning away from the y-axis, as you can see. So when you see it like this, leaning towards the left, this is what we consider a negative correlation. And if we weren't looking at a graph and we were just looking, maybe they gave us a situation and said, pick the correlation this is, what you're looking for is, while one set of values is going up, the other one is going down. So for example, if your x's are going up, your y's are going down. Or if your x's are going down, your y's are going up. Vice versa is also true. So that's negative. All right, then our third option is, hey, there's no correlation at all. And on a graph, we're not going to see any type of leaning. They're just kind of in one big blob. They're not leaning to the right. They're not leaning towards the left. There's no leaning at all. There's no leaning that's being observed. So we'd say, well, there's no correlation here. And so in a situation, if they had typed a situation for us, it probably wouldn't make sense. We'd say, well, there's no relationship between the data sets. Let me give you a weird example. For example, you know, what's the relationship between the number of dogs a person owns and the number of books they read? You see, one doesn't associate with the other necessarily, and so there's no correlation in that situation. Okay, so what I want you to get you to do, the goal today in this example, and you can go ahead and flip to the next page, is if I gave you a graph, could you describe the correlation that's illustrated? And so here on the left side, I'm going to change colors just to make it stand out just a little bit more. Do you see how these cluster of points are kind of leaning back towards the left? So how would you characterize this correlation? Is it a positive correlation, a negative correlation, or is there no correlation evident? So it's one of those 3. It's either positive, negative, or none. There's no correlation at all. What do you think it is? Write it down right above that graph and write it down. See what you think, and then I'll get on here in about 10 seconds and see if we agree. Okay, did you say that it's leaning left, so it's a negative correlation? Did you say that? If you said that, you're absolutely right. This is definitely negative. What's happening is, as the x's, as we're going towards the right on the x-axis, that means we're increasing on the x, the values on the y are coming down. And so that's a negative correlation. Plus, visually, the graph is leaning to the left. What happens when the cluster of points kind of leans towards the right? And that's what's happening here. They are leaning towards the right. then we would say this is a positive correlation. Absolutely right. Okay, so that's the gist of that. Can you look at a graph, a scatter plot, and tell what kind of correlation it is? Positive, negative, or none? Yeah, hopefully you can do that. If you have any questions, bring them to class tomorrow.